Hi, and welcome to All the Woo A to Z. We're your hosts, Suzanne.
And Mychal, and this is Season 2.
Hi, I'm Suzanne, and I am packing my bags for a long-awaited vacation.
Hi, I'm Mychal, and I am packing my bags not for a weighted vacation, but for work. And this is All the Woo.
A to Z.
And specifically, this is going to be J for
Justice,
justice.
which we are interpreting as a justice in the sense of karma.
Karma.
Universal balance.
Yes.
Mayat, if you will.
As always, we invite you to join us at our non-judgmental table where we are just speaking on topics, subjects that we have our own experiences with and sharing our own opinions and hope that you're
Knowledge, understandings, stuff we've learned.
hope that you're entertained. So, today's beverage is in the hands of Suzanne, and I'm going to tee it up here for you.
Means you're going to pronounce it for me?
No.
Oh.
I am going to explain why the pairing and why you're doing the pairing.
Okay.
So we thought it would be fun that oftentimes with karma or balance, people talk about having bad karma with having had too much to drink or just in general not feeling good. And no surprise, typically the answer for a lot of people is another kind of alcohol in order to solve this problem. Suzanne's favorite is?
Becherovka.
Yes.
Which is a Czech digestif, oftentimes coming in from a party or something, or, after a night of podcasting, it'll be sort of my nightcap. It is an elixir of herbs from, as I said, the Czech people, and it comes in a green bottle, and you have to keep it very cold.
So I tried it, and I think that it tastes very similar to, there are some differences, but very similar to Chartreuse, which Suzanne was not a fan of, if you remember the extraterrestrial episode that we did.
Oh, right. Neon green, right.
But there are some differences. I think that Chartreuse is a little bit sweeter, and it has a little bit more viscous. That being said, it oftentimes is used in a very similar way. No surprise that when you have spirits that have herbs in them, they typically had a medicinal quality. And a lot of other spirits, too, that don't necessarily have herbs were medicinal originally, just like we were talking in the tea episode that those herbs had medicinal qualities and then were used for certain things. Just over time, we've learned to enjoy them anyway.
And that's one of the reasons why a lot of these drinks were created by monks.
Yes.
Who had the time and the resources to experiment.
Yes.
And one could argue the public to experiment on, or the population to experiment on.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so justice.
Mayat.
Yes.
Karma. So we, I think, are approaching this in the sense of a balancing out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The
as
justice
opposed
scales.
to a retribution.
Yeah, the justice scales. Oftentimes when people think about karma, they normally think of it in a negative context, and that's not necessarily true. You can also have good karma, right? So good things that you put out there, like a boomerang, what you put out comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always in the same lifetime, too. That's another thing to remember, that kind of the seeds that you sow now will be something that you will harvest, maybe not in this lifetime, but maybe in the next, or maybe something that you sowed last lifetime or a couple lifetimes ago, you're experiencing another part of it in this lifetime. Meaning that if there was a scenario where previously you were the villain, and there was another person who is the victim, that maybe in this lifetime, that person is now the villain and you're the victim, so that you can understand. It's not to be punished. It is to understand the situation from all sides. Right. And then again, that I realize that we're going away from the balance part, but
But that brings fairness to the situation because
correct.
that is really truly walking in someone else's shoes.
Exactly.
Now, I had a reading and astrological reading, my birth chart, and the reader glanced at my husband's chart
Mhm.
and he said, in he named a time frame, he's going to have an opportunity to have like a really great windfall of something. Like
Great.
something wonderful is going to happen to him. And he's going to be inclined to turn it down because he's going to be like, I didn't earn it. But
Mm.
he should know that this is the karma.
Mhm.
This is the benefit of things that he's done in other lives
Yes.
and sacrifices he's made then. And so he needs to receive it now.
You're cut off, Suzanne.
I'm not even that drunk.
I know.
I'm just
Getting handsy.
sitting on my hands now.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
So I think it'll be fine.
So that is, I think, one of the ways that I've straight up heard it explained.
Yes. And like I said, a lot of times people get scared of it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be anything to be scared of. There can be really positive. I think in astrology, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe Saturn is a planet of karma.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes people think of it as because Saturn can be seen in that way because you're learning lessons and because it is a schooling kind of atmosphere, right? That
And the
people
discipline.
right, exactly. For all of these reasons, people start seeing it in a very heavy, oppressive way. And
This
so
is on
then
your permanent record.
right. So then they'll
And
start
it's
to
really not kidding this time.
and so people start to be afraid of that about, oh, well, what have I done that I don't know? And then reaping quote the rewards of
Mm-hmm.
that. But it can also be like we keep on saying good things too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what you're kind of putting out, you're building up that energy to come back to you.
It's interesting in Kabbalah, they say that one of the reasons why you should never curse anybody is because when you do, you are tripling the effect on yourself.
Hmm.
And, the same thing with blessings. If you bless somebody, then it's like a 7 times
Yeah.
return. But keeping the cursing because it will come back to you.
A lot of metaphysical practices, whether it be witchcraft or other magical
Mm-hmm.
practices, all have that same thought that be careful what you put out there because you attract it threefold, tenfold, sevenfold. There's a lot of different versions, but it's always more than just a tit for tat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's, I put out your eye, you have killed my entire family.
Yes.
Which was one of the reasons why, the God of the Old Testament's rules were so crazy because that was kind of the concept of you put out my eye and I will kill your whole family, for him to be like, no, you put out his eye, he puts out your eye.
Mhm.
Like it's not,
Let's not get crazy.
let's keep this contained,
Mhm.
and not just lose our minds. But that was a justice. That
Mhm.
was considered justice. And so karmic or not.
I think that one of the reasons, and this is not the point of this episode, but one of the reasons why a lot of magical practices or spiritual practices that it's thought that it's amplified when you put it out, especially for those that practice magic of some kind or spiritual practice of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
is because you presumably have an upper hand in power that you are understanding how things work otherwise
Mm-hmm.
within nature. And so somehow you're you should know better
Yeah, you have
with
a
response.
greater responsibility the more you know.
Correct. Right. And so if you're going to make somebody else a victim who knows less,
Mm-hmm.
then that's why you're getting
Yeah.
the extra amount is for that reason. Sorry. Like I said, that's not what we are talking about necessarily on our episode, but for those of you who are wondering, "Oh, I wonder why." That's why.
And I have often, well, not often, but there have been times where I've been driving and somebody did something and it was like, you know what? That is why we do not have instant magic,
Mhm.
because we would all be dead on the road. It would just be like 50 armadillos in a row. Like we would just all be dead because that instant response of, you have stepped into my imaginary territory or cut me off or whatever,
Mhm.
that is an emotion that you can't necessarily in that second control, but whether or not you dwell on it, whether or not you do something with it, you can.
Mhm.
And that's where I think the advanced practice comes in
Mhm.
of, okay, that feeling went through me, it went through,
Mhm.
as opposed to, now I'm going to drive or follow you to your exit and, honk as you get off kind of thing.
You just
Um,
reminded me of something that I actually forgot about. I don't know who I heard this from. Somebody I was watching that practices these kinds of things was talking about road rage,
mm,
right? And people cutting you off and how to handle that and how to not just put the anger out and how to be able to release it without yelling at somebody, cursing somebody, or any of those things. And what they recommended or what they did
mhm.
was to basically just, I forget what the exact phrase is. I stopped saying it and I'll tell you why I stopped saying it. Is to say instant instant karma to you and like to point at that at
Oh,
them. Say instant karma to you about that so that it's not myself that has to dull it out and I can just know that it's they will learn the lesson and then see what it is that they've done to somebody else. So if somebody's cutting you off, that probably within that same drive, that somebody's then going to do this exact same thing to them, and it doesn't have to be you, right? So in a way, you're kind of putting it out there, and I can see your face, and I think you know why I've stopped doing this because in a way, it's almost like cursing somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've had an unpleasant experience with you. Now I wish that unpleasant experience on you from someone else.
Hmm.
That that doesn't that does not seem to be the path of a love or non-againstness.
And that's kind of why I stopped doing it. At first, yeah, I found it to be
Because
helpful.
when I've done something like that, I wouldn't want someone to wish that on me.
Instant karma to you, even
No.
if you were being a jerk to somebody on the road.
Well, most times I'm being a jerk to someone on the road. I don't even realize it. Like I glance back, I didn't see you, and then
Like,
all of a sudden you were there.
sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, if I run a red light, if they took a picture, it would be big eyes, big like, oh my
Ah!
gosh.
Yeah,
So but I don't it makes me feel very uncomfortable to think about meeting out
I know.
anything to anyone.
So I just got this visual in my head because there's so many television shows that shows that moment of somebody running the red light and it takes a picture of you and there's like some kind of chaos happening in the car. We're like, ah, like it's just a snapshot of that. That's exactly what I
The
had in my mind.
raccoon has come up
You're
over
like,
the back seat. He's trying to drive through your shoulders. I didn't know I had a raccoon in the car.
I swear it's not my pet. It is now, but it wasn't then.
I'm being attacked by a demon. Yeah. Which, if you've read The Red Fern Grows, you could argue. Yeah.
Mhm. And in a way, I think that it is not a judgment on what I know it kind of sounds like one, but it really is not a judgment of what that person was suggesting. It's kind of was giving some guidance on what to do with that energy when you're so angry,
Well, and
right?
it sounds very much like that same containment of an eye for an eye,
Mhm.
not an eye for the entire village.
Correct.
That sort of let's die let's let's put boundaries around it
Mhm.
and make it digestible.
Yeah.
And perhaps I feel like at this point I should be able to just have the emotion go through me
Mhm.
and not get stuck on it.
Yeah.
If it does get stuck, then, I have a different problem that I need to be thinking about
Mhm.
as opposed to somebody. And I have tried to bless people.
So that sounds like a very southern thing to do, like bless your heart. Like whenever you hear
No, no,
that
no,
where
no, no,
it's
no, no,
more like
no.
a
More like building an entire story. Like, I hope if you are on your way to the hospital that, it's all going to be okay. Or if you are distracted, like whatever is causing you
they really
to
needed a
not
restroom
be,
real bad. It was a matter of life and death.
well,
Sometimes it feels like that.
I have on white jeans. Um, yeah, whatever the situation is, just kind of like, but I think more now it's just I stay in my bubble of
Mhm.
calm and just try not to let anything.
Penetrate,
Yes.
poke at you. So what I've tried to do is semi-similar. Like I said, so I stopped wishing instant karma on people. And instead, I've just, I don't even know. This was a few years ago when I made this change. And I wasn't even doing it for that long when I was doing it. Not that it requires any kind of explanation, really. But I started to really think through it for myself
Mm-hmm.
yes, I wanted to put out love. And if what I am expressing has a ripple effect to others, whether they know it or not,
Mm-hmm.
then how I respond is really important. So at first,
Mm-hmm.
it may be, man, you almost hit me, you almost caused an accident.
Oh, I will honk.
Yes, all of those things, right? And at first, you get kind of frustrated, especially if you see that somebody is not just doing this to you. This is just how they drive and they're just all over the place. And that can be really frustrating.
Or the people who are just bully drivers.
Exactly. Like all of these things where they don't care about anybody else on the road, just themselves. And this becomes very obvious, right? That can be something that can be really difficult to not get upset about because somebody's being reckless. That being said, what I try to do, I think the worst that I'll say, you can tell I will talk to people in my car, right? But when I get irritated with somebody, oftentimes I refer to them as my friend.
Mm.
Like, you almost hit me, my friend, like that kind of thing. That is how I'll kind of do it so that I can let it, like you're saying, move through me. And at the same time, not get stuck on identifying them in any particular way, except for, the worst that it gets is you're my friend, then we're okay.
And you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I will still scream at somebody for being an idiot or something, but and I will totally make judgments, especially if you have one of the trucks that has appendage, shall we say, hanging off of the trailer hitch.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like
Extra truck flare.
Oh my gosh.
So one thing that I do want to say,
but back to karma.
Some things that I want to kind of point out here is Suzanne and I talked about this very briefly beforehand, and not to steal Suzanne's point, but her point initially is that this is something that you see in almost all spiritual practices, some kind of scales that are being some kind of justice, some kind of somebody's paying attention, right, to what you're doing. And some might be, I don't know, I think maybe some people might think that the reason why is that it's some kind of judgmental God or deity. But I think the ultimate purpose is there's some spiritual beliefs and practices that believe that our life here is a school and the whole point is to learn. And so in order to learn, you have to understand things from multiple perspectives. And that's the reason. It's not necessarily to punish anybody or to raise anybody up necessarily. It's to have the experience and to understand that experience from different views.
And as someone who grew up in the exact opposite, where it was one shot.
Don't blow it. Yeah.
And if you blow it, then you pay for eternity.
Yeah.
And to the point that there are people who have that ideology who are almost gleeful about the punishment that the quote unquote evil will receive.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't seem very loving to me, but okay.
But those are people who focus much more on, the concept of the wrath of God or the justice of God or whatever. And I think they maybe haven't really read what the words actually are or what they mean. But I think there is, the concept of hell and universal damnation is a relatively recent in Christianity. That was not the core belief for the first 500 years.
Right.
And it was only because the minority belief, which was held by the Roman Catholic Church, but when we lost the rest of the Catholic Church pretty much, and Rome became the epicenter of Catholicism, that belief became the doctrine.
Right.
And so I'll put a book that I have found incredibly freeing
Mm-hmm.
in the notes, but that isn't the way that basically anything in the Bible really talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that ideology was crafted to keep people in fear, to keep them behaving, to keep them in church, to keep them on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that concept, and then it didn't help with the Reformation, so much of it being,
Our God is a wrathful God.
well, so much of it being based on a concept of the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Calvin, if I'm not mistaken, was an attorney. And so he did a lot of his thinking of Protestantism in the form of being in a courtroom
Mm-hmm.
and, there being basically no mercy
Mm-hmm.
and no second chances. And sorry, I keep hitting my microphone. I'm now sitting on my hands, but all of those kinds of things. But I think that no matter what, and then, we have a lot of our political ideas
Mm-hmm.
that are the concepts of justice and mercy and all of that stuff that are based on what were originally religious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the West, that's one of the reasons why maybe justice is more of a hammer
Mm-hmm.
than it is in other parts of the world.
Yeah. And like you're saying, the mercy part, if you just even look at, we have our justice is blind, right? So the imagery of a woman holding scales, meaning that there's balance, there's equality that's being doled out, I guess, but that she's wearing a blindfold. That's where the mercy part comes in, that there's not a prejudgment, or there
It's
should
not
not.
personal.
Correct.
Because, from all the countries that all the immigrants who came that made this country, they were all coming from systems where it was absolutely personal. It was religious. It was socioeconomic. It was justice was, for whoever could afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the American experiment was truly exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Is truly exceptional in that form.
So have we covered why this is woo?
I think this is woo because it is kind of the underpinning of a worldview that is hugely based on the how you think about justice and karma and fairness and balance. I think is again one of those nexus points
Mm-hmm.
of what your worldview is that reflects what you believe about an afterlife or a current life or a past life or any of those kinds of any other lives, but then also this life,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not, like the Sadducees, they didn't believe that there was anything other than this. And so if you weren't rich and healthy, then God didn't love you.
Wow.
Like,
That's rough. Yeah.
and so, when Jesus is talking to the Sadducees, you can tell by the questions that they ask,
Mm-hmm.
but that kind of thing. And so that's why I think it's woo, because it is an invisible edifice that your
Somebody's keeping track.
ideology is based on,
Mm-hmm.
of whether or not you think someone's keeping track, whether or not you think that that's a just person or a merciful, or just entity, a merciful entity, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, like all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why it's woo. And I'm going to now stop talking with my hands.
That's unfortunate because you have to get the next letter.
All right. We are getting close to the end.
We are. Oh gosh, it's up to me. Oh yeah, I saw what they were.
Yeah, there's
Not a lot to choose from there. Neither of them are easy. Z.
All righty. So join us next time on All the Woo.
A to Z.